One of the major pitfalls of the movement in 2010 was that a lot of the legwork took place over the summer, when there weren't a lot of students around, and the administration tends to act and move even slower. Another pitfall was the fact that myself and others in the organization who were around were kept running through, we're just kept busy with a lot of busy work. Things that were assigned by the administration that we were led to believe would concretely help or concretely work towards opening a space for dialogue and a position for students to influence the nature of this upcoming contract. So that includes, all of the reports that I compiled for Michael DeGrappa and Judith Woodsworth, petitions that were signed, executive summary sheets. The university at one point said, okay, this bottled water thing, we're kind of on board, but we can't do it unless the water fountains are up to snuff. So we need to figure out, we need to know exactly the conditions of every single water fountain in every single building on campus. So Tap Thirst volunteers in the fall of 2010 were kept busy going around to every single water fountain in every single building on both of Concordia's campuses with floor plans marking out the exact location, the make, the model, and the condition of those water fountains. And these were all sort of framed as precursors to any concrete involvement of students in the decision-making process. Another pitfall was surrounding the bottled water movement or bottled water free campus movement versus the anti-exclusivity contract movement. So this was actually one student movement that had the larger goal, supported by the Environmental Advisory Committee, of a non-exclusive, locally sourced, healthy, organic, sustainable food and beverage contract. And the Concordia administration and the Montreal media, to a great extent, kept reframing this movement as only about bottled water. So that really constricted the efficacy of the movement, the perception of the movement in terms of the wider community, and I think ultimately stunted the movement in a lot of ways. Another pitfall that I came across when I was getting people to sign the petition towards a more sustainable food and beverage contract was the fact that professors at the university were either scared or disheartened to show their support. So professors, I would go and meet with professors in their office, and I'm not going to name names, but they would say to me, or via email, and they would say to me, I strongly believe in this. You have no idea how much. I wish I could do something to change it, but it's either A, completely useless because nobody ever listens to me and the university is never going to change their tune, or B, I don't have tenure yet and I'm afraid of losing my job. So that was something that I hadn't anticipated encountering, and that was really kind of disheartening for me as well, having been an undergraduate student who really looked up to professors and saw them as people with people in relative positions of power and authority in the university. Another thing that hit me really hard on a personal level, but I saw this in a lot of other individuals that were active in the movement, was this activist burnout. And this was hugely related to the increased skepticism and mistrust that I had in university administration. So there was this feeling that the university only really stepped up and addressed the issue when students started protesting, when we went to the media, when there was bad publicity, when there was bad PR, when their reputation as a leader in sustainability was at stake. This is obviously something that can be used as leverage, going to the media and saying, Concordia claims to be this, now prove it. But yeah, very disheartening to sort of see that happening. The other big thing, was the fact that university administrators were actually lying to students. And I have documented evidence of this. I have proof of this. I filed mise en demeure, a notice of legal action against Joanne Descoubelis, Marc Gauthier, and Michael DeGrappa for lying to to the student movement, to myself specifically as a representative of Tap Thirst and of the Concordia Food Systems Working Group, saying that no movement would be made on the PepsiCo file until we had all sat down and had a multi-stakeholder meeting, and of course that meeting never took place, and an agreement in principle was signed in secret. And as David Burnens has showed through the evidence that he has acquired through invoking the Freedom of Information Act, there were emails that were passed between Michael DeGrappa and Marc Gauthier discussing the student movement specifically. Are the students still motivated? I'm organizing this meeting with Nestle to dissuade them against pursuing a bottled water-free campus. Like, this was actually happening. Collusion, lying, hugely disheartening for the movement. Another major thing for myself was the impotency of the Environmental Advisory Committee. You have this committee that's comprised of a number of different stakeholders throughout the university community, and it's been tasked with making concrete recommendations for the university in terms of its policy and its practices. This committee falls under the VP Services, reports to the VP Services, and is supposed to influence the actions undertaken by the university. So the Environmental Advisory Committee sat, I met with them, and Faisal Shanib, the environmental coordinator, who works closely with Sustainable Concordia as well, we met, we came up with a list of recommendations to be put into an RFP for this exclusivity contract, and at the end of the day, even though we were informed by Joanne de Cubelis and Marc Gauthier that this was the way to have our criteria incorporated into the decision-making process, it was completely ignored. Never referenced, never incorporated. So that was also a huge pitfall. So much time and energy and so many resources went into getting stakeholders on board, opening a space for dialogue, coming up with criteria towards a more sustainable food and beverage contract, going through the right protocol, going through the right avenues, addressing the specific departments and subcommittees and organizations within the university administration, basically towing the line and making sure that we were doing everything that we were told we needed to do, and at the end of the day, being faced with an exclusivity contract renewal. So that was a major thing for me. Why have an environmental advisory committee if you're not going to take their advice? It's a waste of time. It's a joke. So knowing what I know now, and having not really thought about this for the last 2 years because I needed to take a break, I would definitely put more energy into creating allies with different departments, organizations within the university, getting stakeholders on board and continuing to open up that dialogue, getting people like the David O'Brien Center for Sustainable Enterprise, the John Molson Sustainability Group, the new Concordia Food Coalition, which just sounds incredible and amazing. Having those stakeholders on board, working with the Dean of Students Office. I mean, the previous movement did all of these things, but was ultimately trying to fit itself within the framework that the university administration had provided, was trying to navigate the streams, the map that was set out by the Concordia administration. So I think reestablishing contact with the signatories of that original petition, sort of re-engaging and reopening that dialogue, I think is an excellent way to move forward. I would also focus more this time around on building alternative models. Don't let yourself get bogged down in meeting the needs of the administration. Coming up with useless cost-benefit analyses for contracts that you don't know the stipulations of. Just focus on thinking of concrete alternatives and finding ways to make that sustainable. If you do find yourself wanting to undertake a cost-benefit analysis and having some numbers to work with, now that we have some access to details in the previous contract through the Access to Information Act, in engaging students in the John Molson School of Business to undertake that work. you know, as a human geography student, an anthropology student, I'm interested in these things, but I'm not necessarily the most equipped. And also outsourcing those projects to other sectors of the university increases buy-in. It increases the scope of this multi-stakeholder movement. Another thing that's really important and that we really saw at the crux of the movement around the protest at the end of October is that a strong, mobilized student movement is necessary. As much as I want to believe, and I've always wanted to believe, that the university administration itself believes in the environmental policy that it has legislated, at the end of the day, from what I've seen, the university continues to think of the spheres of environment, politics, and social sustainability as encompassed or encapsulated by financial economic concerns. So in looking at a cost-benefit analysis within the university administration framework, that's always going to come down to the bottom line of dollar values. Is this going to cost the university money, or is it going to save the university money? And that's something that I've seen working with Sustainable Concordia and as the Sustainable Ambassadors Program Coordinator as well, that the university is keen to adopt any environmental or social sustainability endeavors if it saves the money, if it makes them look good. But if it's expensive, if it means sacrificing a lucrative exclusivity contract, then that's not going to happen. So building alternative frameworks and not getting bogged down in trying to frame the movement within the administration, because as far as I'm concerned, the two are incommensurable, right? So finding ways to institutionalize alternatives without compromising them.